Skilling in RuneScape is changing, and today we're gonna discuss its future. So, first of all, I think we need to go a bit back in time and sort of understand how skilling used to work in the game and how it still works majorly in old school. So, skilling used to, at least in a lot of MMORPGs, be about resource competition. And at least in RuneScape, skilling always held a place of consistent money making, and it's not the highest money making, but it was consistent. You didn't need a unique drop or anything like that. You pretty much could expect an average GP per hour, and you had to compete with other players to get that average GP per hour, just like how you had to compete with other players for spots to kill monsters. Now, we've come a long way since then, and that has evolved quite a lot. And at the end of the day, a lot of players just don't really enjoy having to compete for spots, which is exactly the reason as to why, over the years, skilling has gone from actually being quite valuable in the game to not being valuable at all. People were sick of having to compete for resources, and quite honestly, a lot of skills were quite simple and mind numbing. So, as PVM started getting deeper and deeper, or at least what people knew of it, it started gaining far more favor as the gaming industry changed into a more engaging gameplay style, all about the gameplay. Players also started engaging far more with PvM in RuneScape, and well, that has left skilling in the dust because when it comes to PvM, a lot of monsters actually do a lot of or do have a lot of skilling drops in their drop tables. This essentially just devalued skilling from something that you had to do if you wanted a certain item in game to not even being a good money maker anymore. And that is just entirely devalued. And well, how is Jagex supposed to solve that? Is skilling just dead in the water? Do people even care about it? And can we do anything to change it? And the truth is, Jagex is already doing something to change it, and this will most likely be the feature of every skill, both in RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape. So, to explain what I mean, essentially RuneScape 3 had a mining and smithing rework back in 2019, if memory serves me correct, and essentially they just changed the entire thing. First of all, mining, you no longer need to compete for resources because at the end of the day, what matters is the resources location in Gillinor in the map. It doesn't matter if there's a lot of people in it or not. That just doesn't really affect you. And they also, on top of that, made it so essentially some nodes sometimes have luminescent, like, things on top of it. You can click for extra damage, which, it's basically just mining ore faster, and as a result, just, it rewards active gameplay, but you can also just completely AFK it. There's also a stamina bar that you need to click on, so it's not entirely AFK. Although with certain bonuses, it kind of is completely AFK. So yeah, I guess. But yeah, that's essentially was the changes to mining. Not big changes, but changes enough that actually made mining into, well, something decent. It's no longer such a dull skill that you have to compete with other people and bash your head in because you're getting 30k XP per hour, and then you just have a bot yoinking all the rune ores. But it's also not exactly the most engaging thing yet. But well, it's mining. How engaging can it actually be? And smithing also suffered the same fate. Essentially, smithing nowadays, you gain XP by working on a bar, not necessarily by just making items. So at the end of the day, it is somewhat AFK, although it's still the same XP rates as old smithing, but this rewards you much more with actually, taking into consideration what items you're gonna do, if you're gonna upgrade them or not, because you can upgrade items in RuneScape 3 nowadays. And there's overall more thoughts put into smithing because every item does have XP and every item can, give you a nice amount of GP at the end of the day. And they made these skills just overall more enjoyable. They brought them up to speed and up to a more, modern gameplay, or, well, at least how modern a point and click game allows you to do. But this wasn't the only thing they did to the skills. While I did bring them up to speed, the reason as to why these two skills are so valued in RuneScape 3 is because Jagex, alongside, just reworking those skills, also reworked what place they have into the game. Not only do those skills actually get aided by other skills like, for example, strength impacts how much damage you do to a rock, which essentially just means how fast you actually mine something, but at the same time, all of the ores and bars and, well, alchemals were removed from boss drop tables, and all of the levels were realigned. At the end of the day, yeah, it doesn't make much sense for you to be level 90 smithing and start smithing stuff that you can wear at 40 combat. It really doesn't make much sense. So they realigned all the levels, removed all the ores from the PVM drop tables, they removed all the bars and all the items from it and replaced it with salvage. And salvage are essentially the alchable items that, monsters have, or at least the items that people would just alch anyway, right? So in a way, in RuneScape 3, if you actually want to get a specific smithing item or ores to smith that item, you actually do need to interact with the skill. Now, you might say, well, there's PVM drops that are just much better than any armor I can get into the game, so really, why should I even go and mine? I can just go do some boss and get those items and, they're much better than any item I can smith. Well, that's where smithing again in RuneScape 3 comes up. Because if you want to get the best in slot melee armor in RuneScape 3, you need to smith it yourself. Or, well, I guess you can buy it from the GE, or at least you can buy the components from the GE, but they're not exactly cheap, but you still need to put it together, which is actually quite a nice amount of work. So, in a way, you actually have an incentive to train these skills again, not only because they actually do give you relevant content for, the rest of the game, but also because there's no other option for you but to do these skills. The bosses no longer drop any ore, no the Slayer monsters or anything like that. These monsters, on the other hand, the ore drops got replaced with spirit ores. Essentially, you can get a runite spirit ore, which is essentially an ore that when you have it in your inventory and you're mining runite ore, you actually get two instead of one, and the spirit gets consumed. These stone spirits actually aren't that valuable, which sometimes when you get them when you're PVMing, it's kind of shit, but when you consider that nowadays mining is actually a viable money maker, maybe all things considered is not that bad that it's not that valuable. So at the end of the day, mining and smithing is a enjoyable experience in RuneScape 3 that is actually worth it to train because you do get something out of it and you do get rewards out of it. And this is also the exact same thing they did for herblore and farming. Now, they didn't entirely rework those skills, but they also removed all herb drops from any drop table. And granted, while you can plant multiple seeds in the same herb patch, which kind of crashed the price of the herbs anyway, at the end of the day, from PVMing, all you can get rather is the seed drops that you get from or that you have to use to plant to get the herbs. And that was a nice change. All of these to actually force you to engage with farming and actually plant herbs as opposed to just go do some boss and just get all supplies that way. Skilling got so the value thanks to botting and all of these things, but PVM also certainly didn't help. And that's the thing. I mean, look, the ultimate Iron Man meta at some point in old school before the drop table got nerfed was to actually just do Zulrah for supplies. Because you would get nice prayer XP with all of the dragon bones, you would get essentially 99 cooking with all of the grapes, and all of the sharks as well were nice supplies, and you'd get a bunch of dehides and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you would get a lot of good stuff, and I don't think that PVMing should ever be the best thing to do for skilling, right? And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, those were the changes that RuneScape 3 made. But, well, what about old school? I mean, are they gonna make those changes? Well, the idea of stone spirits has already been floated around when it comes to skilling in old school, not just mining and smithing like in RuneScape 3, but all spots in old school. I've seen that idea actually float around since 2015, I think, 16 at this point. And I don't know if it will ever come into the game, but eventually it probably will. However, with forestry coming into the game, it's pretty clear that Jagex is doing away slowly with the old mentality of having to compete for resources. Jagex doesn't want a game where you have to compete for resources, especially not with all the bots going on. Like, again, if you try and get Rune Ore, I mean, good luck to get it anywhere outside of the wilderness because they will just be full of bots. So at the end of the day, to combat this, they are making skilling more focused on community based. So the more people are actually doing it in an area, the more rewards you actually get for doing them in that area. And while forestry is the first thing that we're going to have in old school, chances are it won't be the last. And following RuneScape 3's example, I also doubt that in RuneScape 3 mining and smithing rework will be the last rework I will have. I very much doubt that, and while we might not rework all of the gathering skills, we will definitely have a lot of the removing certain skilling drops from drop tables because at the end of the day, even if it's just a money maker, that does devalue skilling quite a bit. I don't believe that Jagex wants to do it all in one go, but it's pretty clear that they want to give you more than just the items when you are skilling. They want to not only make skilling more enjoyable at the end of the day by not having you compete for resources and making it more community based, like for example star mining, where you actually go into other players and you go to a friend chat and you actually talk with them and like regardless of how many people are mining it, you always get rewards for yourself, and it's nice to be around other people skilling, right? So at the end of the day, I think that that is the plan for the future, and I think that forestry in old school will be the beginning of that. Again, I doubt that we'll have another skilling, I guess, quote unquote, rework. I mean, this is more of an expansion than a rework, although it will probably affect how you're going to engage with a skill. So it's kind of a rework, but that will happen for every other skill under the sun.